Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I am here with a book haul. This is part one of my 7th visit to Second Time Books in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And I paid a visit to Second Time Books as part of my Small Business Saturday observation. I like to visit an independent bookstore, whether they sell new books or they sell books secondhand. I think that it is a great opportunity to support some of my favorite bookstores, and I think that Brandon is doing a terrific job at Second Time Books. I think that with him at the helm, that place can operate for the decades to come. This first part, I'm going to talk about the books that I acquired for the box sale. This box sale, which funny enough is a Day Dallas Books box, I order quite a few books from there. It's for Black Friday and Small Business Saturday. Anything that fits in here is $8. You can either get an individual book for $1 each, or you can fill this whole thing up and get it for $8 worth. And there's definitely a way that you could make it work. And I acquired quite a few books, so let's get into it. First, I'm going to show you the science fiction that I acquired. Because science fiction, fantasy, and literary fiction are the areas of fiction that Second Time Books specializes in. They do have books in other genres, but these are their areas that they flourish. And I picked up books by Paul Anderson. I read The Star Fox. I wasn't too fond of it, but I do want to give him another chance because I want to get into the libertarian science fiction writers that were recognized for the Prometheus Awards. Even though the Prometheus Awards has also recognized writers, it's more so those that incorporate the need for freedom and the strength of the individual over a dominating authority. But the Paul Anderson books that I got were Vault of the Ages, The By-Worlder, Guardians of Time, The Saturn Game, and this also is a double-header, which there are back in the day, a lot of your science fiction books came as double-headers. The other side is Iceborne by Gregory Benford and Paul A. Carter. People of the Wind, The High Crusade, The Rebel Worlds, The Night Face, Three Worlds to Conquer. I got The Pride of Chinur by C.J. Chera. I recognize this name because I got their more recent book that I believe was a collaboration. Because, as I said before, I want to acquire some more Prometheus Award winners into my collection. This one really stuck out to me because this is such a magnificent idea and just such a creative way to execute this. This is called Five Fates, and this is a collaboration with Keith Lamar, Paul Anderson, Frank Herbert, Gordon Dixon, and Harlan Ellison. Frank Herbert we know far more now for his creation of the Dune universe and the Dune series. And Harlan Ellison's work we know pretty well, too. But the concept for this book is that they were each given an idea and they had to create a story based off of that. in this case, the story hook was Bailey's death at the euthanasia center. And each of them had to create a work. They each had their own vision as to how they would take, as to what Bailey's fate would be. And I'm just really intrigued to see. It's very much like a reality competition, very much like watching Chopped, or where they're each given X amount of ingredients and they have to interpret it in any which way they find. This is a more general anthology, Orbit 19. This was edited by Damon Knight, who I incredibly admire. I started reading his book on writing short fiction, but he's known most for being the author of the short story To Serve Man, which was interpreted into an episode of The Twilight Zone. But this has an interesting batch of writers here. Here's another anthology, New Dimensions Science Fiction, edited by Robert Silverberg. And these names are not as familiar either, but I'm still intrigued to see what kind of short works they have put together. I want to look into Frederick Pohl a little bit as well, and this is his book Gem. And then continuing on wanting to acquire more works from Prometheus Award winners, here is The Minervan Experiment by James P. Hogan. He was one of the legendary names that I came across. Next, I acquired some quote-unquote literary fiction. Here is a collection of Graham Greene's 21 stories. I own The Quiet American and a few of his other novels, but I would be interested to see how he interprets short fiction. I have yet to read any of it. I have yet to read anything that he's written, but I would like to get into that. I read one chapter of The Quiet American, and for the try a chapter tag, and it's something that I may have to dip back into, but I have yet to do so. Here's a collection, here's a Norton Critical edition of Alfred Lord Tennyson's poetry. I'm really eager to get into this. The only downside is that it has been annotated, and I think that there's people that can appreciate that, but I personally prefer not going through annotated works. That's just a preference of mine. I would rather read something clear, and I personally like to leave my notes on the side. I like to do it in a notebook. And here is Crab Walk, novel by Gunter Grass. I started reading The Tin Drum, and I was not entirely a fan from what initially. I do want to go through it more, because I was reading it as a buddy read. The person that I was buddy reading it with was losing interest, so he decided that he couldn't do it, that he decided to step out, and so I decided to put it down for the time being. But this is an interesting concept. I'm just going to read the blurb for you as far as this is concerned. In January 1945, a Soviet submarine attacked the Wilhelm Gustloff, a German cruise ship turned refugee carrier, sending some 9,000 people to their deaths in the Baltic Sea. Born to an unwed mother on a lifeboat the night of the attack, a middle-aged journalist is trying to piece together the tragic events. While his mother sees her whole existence in terms of that calamitous moment, he wishes their life could have been less touched by the past. But for his teenage son, who dabbles in the far-right corners of the internet, the obscurity of the Gustlav's fate embodies the denial of Germany's wartime suffering. Crabwalk is at once a captivating tale of a tragedy at sea and a critical meditation on Germany's struggle with its past. It's a very interesting perspective that we're going to be getting from Günter Grass, having grown up during a distressing time on the side of a regime that was among the most evil of all time. It's certainly among the most evil within the last 2 centuries. Then I got some more nonfiction. I'm an enthusiast for Texas Hold'em poker, and I wish that I had the opportunity to play more. And I would say the greatest poker player of all time, and the pioneer of Texas Hold'em, not just as an attention-grabbing sport, but as a game itself, is Doyle Brunson. And to this day, Doyle Brunson is still playing. This is Doyle Brunson, My 50 Most Memorable Hands, which he talks about the 10-2 offsuit that on 2 occasions he won the World Series of Poker with. This ranges from the 70s up until the 2000s, because this was written in 2007. It primarily talks about his tournament hands, and in particular the World Series of Poker. He doesn't take part in the World Series of Poker so much anymore, but he does. He'll still play, and he appeared on a recent season of High Stakes Poker, which that's moved online now. But on the topic of High Stakes Poker, I'm glad that they brought back AJ Benza and Gabe Kaplan, because during the later years that they were on GSN, they had Gabe Kaplan doing it on his own, and then they brought in Norm Macdonald. But I'm digressing here. But I would definitely be intrigued to read up on Doyle Brunson's perspective of his memorable hands, because I think that that's a magnificent thing. It's kind of like me reminiscing about taking part in tournaments back in high school. Here is Theodore Roosevelt and the Politics of Power by G. Wallace Chessman. And this is an overview of Theodore Roosevelt and his approach to leadership, which probably a shorter version of Thomas Jefferson's The Art of Power, which John Meacham wrote. But this should still be intriguing nonetheless. This is April 1865 by J. Winnick. I have 1944, which has to do with FDR and his saving America. But this is part of a Civil War saga and pertains to the very eventful month of April of 1865, which a lot of things took place as far as the summing up the Civil War, ultimately, at Appomattox, where Lee surrendered to Grant, and then Uh, 5 days later, Lincoln was at Ford Theater, and he was assassinated. He was shot, and he died the next day. By the end of the month, Andrew Johnson was president. Actually, he became president even sooner, but they were bound to be taking another direction as far as Reconstruction is concerned. And on the topic of FDR, here is Traitor to His Class: The Privileged Life and Radical Presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt by H.W. Brands. He wrote about Andrew Jackson. He's written about Ronald Reagan. I believe he's written about other presidents, too, because I recognize his name with the American President series as well. But this talks about how FDR, being more of an upperclassman, became a president that really created programs to help those that needed it, be it the elderly with Social Security, just the whole factions of the New Deal with the bread lines and the job programs that he put in place. But it's debatable as to whether or not FDR had a strategy, but I think there's also that explanation that the way that those beyond him took advantage of programs of this nature, such as Lyndon B. Johnson, where they would use these to make it so that they'd be more dependent on the government rather than give them use this as a bridge to where they want to go. Finally, I got Lobster at Home by Jasper White. And this is a cookbook that contains recipes that consist of lobster. And this ranges from everywhere, anything from soup to chowder to pasta to sandwiches and salad and everything in between. Even lobster as the main piece itself. So those are the books that I acquired, and I definitely want to get back there at some point. I will also be releasing a video where I talk about what I acquired inside, because there's always something to find in there. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel, and I hope you check out Second Time Books when you get the opportunity, especially if you live near, or plan to visit the Mount Laurel, New Jersey area. Second Time Books is in the Rancocas Woods area. For now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.